This is TWiP.
Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I am your host, Frederick Van Johnson. All right, we're going fishing today. As I mentioned in that intro there, today's guest has an interesting background that's a little bit more unique, let's say, than probably any of the guests that I've had on This Week in Photo to date. And we're talking, 4-figure count episodes here, right? So you're going to get a kick out of this conversation. I think one of the things that you'll get a kick out of is the fact that Devan is multifaceted and a little bit of a, what's the word I'm looking for? A cipher? I don't know. Because he's doing two things. He's doing artistic things on one side, but then another kind of artistic thing on the other side. One is sort of conservation leaning, and the other one, not so much, but still in the same vein. So we're going to talk about all this stuff, how he photographs what he photographs, why he does what he does, and just get to the bottom of what this fish bone thing is. Devan, welcome to the podcast, man. How's it going?
Doing good, man. How are you? I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, man, thank you for coming on. Before we even continue the interview, the audience should know you and I have been talking during the pre-interview and during, even when we started this one, we've known each other for 100 years, right? We just chat back and forth. Never met before the pre-interview, but, you connect with those people that are just oh, you're a normal human. Wow. Rare.
Yes. It's been awesome. I mean, super easy to chat back and forth. I mean, lots of things in common. I mean, obviously we love photos. We got little ones and I mean, it's fantastic.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's as I tell all of my guests on This Week in Photo, this podcast isn't designed to be like a CNN interview or a list of scripted questions or, I have a gotcha in there. I got to see if I can make Devan cry on my podcast. This is a conversation between two people hanging out, having beverages, beers or whatever that both happen to like the same thing. And we're just comparing notes and having a conversation. That's it. Right. Which I think that's the best way to have these conversations. So, diving into it, let's start from the beginning, right? Not the beginning, not the hospital where you came out. Yeah. Just let's talk about,
I mean, we could really go down that memory lane if that's the direction you wanted to go.
No, let's take a later exit off memory lane. So let's start with just sort of your entree into the first thing we're going to talk about, and that's the fishing world, the world of catching food out of bodies of water or sporting out of bodies of water. How do you go from fishing into f-stops and shutter speeds and ISO? How does that work?
The art of fly fishing, it is an art form, right? And you have to practice to get good at it, and you're never going to stop learning no matter what you do, right? There's always something. There's a next step. Okay, I've caught enough trout. I'm going to go chase steelhead. Or, I don't like the cold, so I'm going to go spend time in the salt water. And I'm going to, each one has its own thing. It's a lot like photography, right? So you get to share that art visually. So you're taking art and you're creating art, and together they just mesh really, really well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's finding something that you enjoy, that you're passionate about, and then having another thing layer on top of that to bring out even more joy from it. That's the name of the game. It's I like camping and then landscape photography too. Wow. Two great tastes that taste great together. I feel like on the surface, yeah, it's easy. Whatever. You're on a boat, you take a picture of the fish, you put the camera down, you keep fishing. Whatever. Not that simple, right? As per our first conversation, there's more to it than that. Can you go into, that sort of transition and why it's more than a lot of people think?
Everybody carries a camera in their pocket basically at this point with cell phones, but, didn't have fancy cell phones when I started. So we had point and shoot cameras and just started carrying that with me. And you're always just documenting your catch or just kind of experience with your buddies or whatever. And it wasn't really ever that serious. And then spend a little time. I had some friends who were some serious photographers that were carrying their DSLRs with them on the river, and watching what they were putting out as far as the art really got me excited and got me curious and made me want to do what they were doing. And so it kind of pushed me to try and get more creative with my point and shoot and, try and go beyond just that standard, grip and grin, holding a fish, whatever. How can I capture the essence of what I love doing in fishing, and how can I tell that story through still images? And that's kind of where the drive to start shooting photos a little bit more documentary style, or, for me to refer to or share with people or whatever, came from. So that's kind of the beginning.
Is it when you're doing these kind of shots, and there'll be a gallery obviously in the blog post that people can go check out, and as we're talking, if they're on the blog right now, definitely go scroll through the gallery and look at these images. But I at least oversimplify it when I say, oh yeah, you're just gonna go out there and take a picture and then you're done. When we were talking earlier, before, you were telling me that it's more of a storytelling journey, right? And trying to craft that story of what the fishermen or whoever's out there are feeling and going through, and capturing that in more of a photojournalistic sort of way. When you do that, are you pre-conceptualizing what you're going to shoot? Like, let me get this shot and that shot. If I get these 5 shots, I'm good. Do you do that? Or is it more like most of us do, is like, hey, I'm a ninja, throw me into a situation and I'm going to come out with something, right?
It's definitely the run and gun style. Like,
Yeah.
I could go out, I could spend 3 days writing up everything, like a full shot list, especially if I'm shooting video to go along with it. I could create this whole big shot list of how I want to tell this epic story. And inevitably, I never take the list out of my pocket, and I try to be more in the moment and capture the story as it unfolds in front of me. So, like, you never know what the day is going to have. Right? It's steelheading is a perfect example. You can't go out and be like, okay, we're going to get to this epic spot, we're going to catch a fish, and we're going to get to see the whole experience of fighting the fish and landing the fish, and then spending a little time with this amazing creature, and then releasing him back, and just kind of the success shared with friends, and, whatever. It doesn't work like that. Like, you could go out and catch nothing. And so it's like, how do I tell the experience of spending time, sharing time with people, and how can I bring people into what I'm seeing through my photos, and kind of follow along the journey of the experience as a whole. Waking up in the morning, having coffee with your friends around the table, getting ready for the day, going and getting waitered up, heading to the river. If you're floating, launching the boat, floating down through these just amazing places, because, these fish live in some of the most beautiful places in the world. And so being able to sit back and soak that experience up, and then try and find a way to take a picture that encapsulates that moment, and, throughout the day of just the journey, right? What we're eating, how we're fishing, what we're doing to try and be successful, just that's kind of like, if I write it out, it never comes through. I might as well just wad it up and throw it in the trash. I can brainstorm some ideas, but it's way better to just shoot from the hip and try and be in the moment as much as possible.
That reminds me of? That reminds me of, you remember the Avengers Endgame? Some of you are a Marvel fan, but Avengers Endgame, there's a storyline in there between Doctor Strange, who knows magic and all this, and Tony Stark, who's Iron Man, right? Tony Stark is obviously our hero. He's going to save the day at the end of the movie. Doctor Strange already knows how things are going to end because he has seen the future somehow. Tony's like, why don't you just tell me what's going to happen, whatever. And Doctor Strange goes, because if I tell you what's going to happen, it won't happen.
Exactly.
Right? That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
If I tell you what's going to happen, it won't happen, right? It's got to play out.
Exactly. You don't want to change the storyline.
Million questions on that. Like, you're out there, you're documenting the story. Like, when I'm shooting, time is different, right? You're in the camera. It's like when you're driving, you're focused on the road, people around you, your speed, any cops around, right? You're preoccupied. Your music's playing, so all this stuff is happening. Sometimes you miss stuff, right? Because of all that stuff happening, right? There may be a whatever happened on the side of the road. You never would have seen it because all your senses are trained. When you're on a boat, yeah, exactly. Tunnel vision, right? When you're on a boat and you're shooting, you're like trying to build the story, and you got a million things in your head, plus you're trying to get the exposure right, and the lights over there, and these bugs flying around me, and all these things. How do you stay safe? Like, how do you not drop a $2,500 camera kit or body in the water? Or have you, my friend?
I've killed a few camera bodies. There's no question. I killed one earlier this year. My shoot.
It is still in its final resting place?
Oh, no. I held on to it. I mean, I've lost filters in the river. I've lost lens hoods in the river. I've lost, you name it. it's been in the river, including the cameras. I've retrieved the cameras, but I'm one of those things like I look at my camera gear as a tool, and if I'm not willing to risk it, then why even have it out there? So that's like it to me. The reward is worth the risk, and ruin a camera body, whatever. Like they can be replaced. It sucks, and like at the moment you're a little bummed out, and but I've killed a number of camera bodies on shoots over the years.
I figure because I know I would have. I've nearly killed several drones over the years flying over the water. Yeah. Normally because I'm pushing the limits and radio signals travel differently over water apparently, and which your drone doesn't necessarily account for. So do the math on that stretch.
It starts lowering itself over moving water. It wants to crash itself into the water all the time. Like I've left drones in trees for 3 months getting rained on. Like I just couldn't get it out. Finally got it out, and it came back to life somehow.
So I'm in the Bay Area, and there's this, I don't know if you've ever been here, but there's this landmass in the Bay called Treasure Island, right? Which is like a man-made. It used to be a military base or whatever, but it standing on Treasure Island, looking back towards the city over the bay. That's the famous San Francisco shot, right? With the Transamerica building and the bridge and all that stuff, right? So when I got my first Mavic, or not my first Mavic even, it was a Phantom. Remember the Phantom?
Oh yeah,
the first iconic like white egg
minutes.
Yeah. So I had brand new. I had it less than a week. Had that thing. Went out to Treasure Island because I had it in my head. Like everybody gets San Francisco from Treasure Island. Who has San Francisco from the Bay on the way to Treasure Island with the ferry building and all that? So went to go get that shot. Still a new drone pilot. I don't even call me a drone pilot even now. Halfway there, it started losing signal. It was like I had fully charged battery. Like I should have had like 15 minutes, like 5 minutes into the journey. It started throwing all kinds of errors and everything. And then I lost control of it and then regained control and then just hightailed it back and made it barely. Like, it would have dropped out of there in the next 10 seconds, right? But I made it. So crazy. Yeah, but water is unforgiving with photography, I guess, is the bottom line to that. And you have chosen a path that puts you and expensive gear over H2O, which is fine. Here's a question, though. Have you considered, so the stuff you're doing, you're out on the river, and it's storytelling, probably a million stories out there for you to tell, obviously, right? So there's no shortage of things to shoot, and then you can switch to macro or whatever, right? But wondering, have you like not instead of, but in addition to doing that kind of photography, doing more environmentally facing things like, I'm going to go out and shoot the Great Garbage Patch in the Pacific or something, and tell that story, or tell the story of the people trying to clean it up, something like that. Have you ever thought about doing that? Or
so not necessarily out to that extent out there.
Yeah.
I do some shooting. I work with a nonprofit here in Idaho. It's the Henry's Fork Foundation and the South Fork Initiative. And I do some shooting around that, trying to tell the story of protecting the river that we've got here. And the river drainage as a whole. And we've got some amazing people on staff and just trying to capture their story a little bit. I've had the opportunity to get out with those guys and do some shooting, and the work that they're doing is just absolutely amazing. So, it's a little bit more local, like close to home, but I'm grateful to have the opportunity to spend some time with those folks.
And it keeps your skills sharp too, right? Having a niche that you are passionate about and then being able to document it, because then 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now, you're going to look back on those pictures and you're going to be like, that was when I was, doing that genre. That's so cool. So before we leave this topic, I just the last sort of bit I wanted to throw on there. I know there's a lot of photographers in the TWiP audience that may be resonating with this, because I haven't done one of these. Like I said, you're the first person I had this kind of interview with. So 2-part question. Photographers that are thinking about doing this kind of storytelling. It feels like street photography, but there's no street, right? Or that kind of thing. I don't know. Any tips or tricks for those folks? And then I'll give you the second half.
Yeah, so that's a great way to put it. It definitely is more like street photography in the way that I kind of approach, telling the story or getting out there and taking the shot. Don't be afraid to try different things when you're taking these photos. I tend to put my camera really close to the water. I mean, like an inch off the top of the water to try and get some of these shots. And if you worry about your gear, just try and like back off and say, it's going to be okay. These things are water sealed. If it gets wet, it'll probably survive. I mean, even if you submerge it, it'll probably survive, but like take chances. Don't be afraid of rain. I shoot a ton in heavy rain because I love the lighting. Like I love that flat light in just, when it's completely socked in on the Oregon coast and it's pounding rain, it just gives you such a different feel to your photos. So don't be afraid to risk some of your camera gear and get creative with your shots, because, you can get that typical shot of shooting the back of somebody's head or whatever, but something that I found resonates with people is they want to see people's faces. They want to see expressions. They want to see eyes. They want to see whether it's intensity, whether it's joy, whatever it is. It finds a way for them to connect and put themselves in that situation at that moment by looking at the image. And so I would just say, hey, get out there, do it. Just get out and take pictures and find ways to push yourself beyond what you're comfortable with. And I'm going to say one of my weaknesses, I'm not a landscape guy and I would like to get better at landscape. So I'm trying to push myself to take more landscape photos. I've always been more of that. I love that shallow depth of field, that crush background, really like hyper focused on the person that's a part of my story that I'm telling. So I hope that was an okay answer to that question.
It was, yeah. One of the themes that has popped up in the series of interviews I've done over the years is the better photographers usually are focused, literally and figuratively, but are focused on one particular kind of thing, right? Or a type of photography. But I want to couch that because not always, right? So there's a lot of people that find joy in niching down and saying, yes, I am going to be known as the macro photographer, or like my friend Don Komarechka, when you say his name, people think snowflake photography, right? I want to be synonymous with a type of art, right? And they go for that. But then there's a second type of person that I think, and this is not a definitive list, but the second type of person that is more of a storyteller and wants to tell a narrative by any means necessary. If it makes sense to shoot this thing with a camera and tell a narrative in photos that I'm going to put on a particular wall and make a collage out of it, then that's one thing that you're going after, right? You're like a chef looking at a recipe, right? So there's that recipe, but then there might be like your recipe where you're like, okay, I'm shooting and telling a narrative because it brings me joy, and my clients, it brings us joy to see this particular narrative shot with this shallow depth of field style and, all that. And then there's the more still on the narrative storytelling side, there are the people that are pure, I don't care about the art form. I care, but I don't care, right? It's more about the story. And if the story that I'm trying to tell is better served through audio, then I'm going to do audio. If it's better told through photography, then I'm going to do photography. Maybe it's better told through all of those in some way. I'm going to do all that, right? So back in the day, I used to call those people multimediagraphers. Those are people that are telling stories through many media versus a photographer, a recorder of light by definition. So modern photographers like yourselves are more on the narrative side and telling narratives using the story of light. So we're going to switch gears as we round the corner here. There's another side to you, as I alluded to in the beginning. So kind of a dichotomy, multiple personality disorder. So you are also into another form of photography and another form of, I don't know if you call it a hobby or a passion. Like, what's the difference between a passion and an obsession? I don't know. So one of those.
I think passion and obsession are one and the same a little bit.
They are sisters.
Yeah, like if you're obsessed with photography or if you're obsessed with creating art, right? Like whether it's photo or video or whatever, you can be passionate about it. But I guess the next step is obsession, where you're driven to
Would you get something else
all the time. Yeah, for sure. It definitely gets up.
Water is good. Drowning, not so good.
Right. Exactly.
Much of a good thing is not so good. Yeah, but that other side of you is, yeah, I don't even want to say ironically, it's just like completely opposite. Ford trucks. So tell me about how that split is going on. How do those two diagrams overlap?
I've been shooting the outdoor industry for a number of years, and
Yeah.
when your job becomes fishing, you need a hobby, right? And like, as weird as that sounds, it's like, oh, well, fishing's a hobby. Well, it became a job, and so I needed a release, and so my release became working on old Ford trucks. And obviously, I like to document things, so I kind of documented the process of rebuilding old Fords, and then I kind of got into shooting other people's vehicles, and as far as like from an automotive side of things, and it just kind of pushed me. I'm like, oh, this is kind of fun. Not only can I get creative with this, but how do I tell the story of an automobile versus just a person going and experience the outdoors or the fishing or whatever it is? How can I tell a story of either a new vehicle or a classic vehicle in a creative way that gets people to kind of look at it as it's also a piece of art that I'm trying to capture? Right. So, yeah.
Yeah. How does the style change between the two types of photography? You're out on a boat doing photos and telling those stories. Is it just a matter of like focal length? Okay, when I'm shooting cars or vehicles, I need a wide angle lens, and I'm doing this kind of thing. When I'm out there, fast lens, shallow depth field. Like, is it that simple, or is it something more deep?
It can be that simple. Like, you can make photography as simple as you want to make it, right? But I still try and capture a shallow depth of field, but I want, I'm pulling my subject further away from the background so I can still shoot, like a 5.6 and get that dump, but still have everything in focus in the way that I want it, or a 7.1 or whatever, right? And, shooting the vehicle as a whole, you get those beautiful shots, but then you can come in and you can kind of see those close-up beautiful pieces that somebody put this custom touch here, the custom touch there, or they modified the engine in this way, and maybe it's unique to this vehicle because they did it themselves or they had a specific shop do it. And so trying to find ways to not only capture the beauty of the vehicle as a whole, but find a way to capture those details that help tell the story of it all together.
Yeah.
That's
so
part
cool.
of the fun.
Is it so? But you are niching down even further, right? So you have a particular passion for Fords, and not just Fords, a particular Ford. So tell me about that, and what Ford and why.
So I have a passion for 73 to 79 Ford trucks, and it really all started when I was a little kid. I mean, riding around in them and just growing up being around that particular body style made me fall in love with it. And so, that kind of grew into more of like the F100s as a whole. And I just adore that particular pickup. If I'm going to pick one, that's the one I'm going to pick is an old Ford, building a Slam Bronco, which is, people either love it or they hate it, but it's something totally different.
What is it for the people that have never heard of a Slam Bronco? What does that mean?
So I'm building a 1978 Ford Bronco. They made this body style for 2 years. It's the big body, first years of the big body Bronco, and they come 4-wheel drive. And so the thought process kind of went into building this truck was, I can't do a 4-wheel drive version of this vehicle better than it's already been done thousands and thousands of times, from off-road racing to rock crawling to total show vehicles or whatever. So how can I do something that's totally different? And I'm like, I'm going to lay it on the ground. I mean, remove the suspension, turn it into a 2-wheel drive so that the frame will lay on the ground. It's on air ride. And so I just started cutting one of these up and going down that road of customizing it so it was different from everybody else's. And like, why not?
That's what I was saying in that intro, right? That's two completely opposite worlds. Well, maybe not, right? It's still light. Light is falling on everything, whether it's a fish or if it's a Ford.
Right.
And that on the fish side of things, there you have what you use the term, I think it was fishbone. Define that for the non-initiated. What is a fishbone?
Ooh, fishbone. I guess, you think about it as a photographer who likes to spend time fishing, and something that, they don't necessarily have to have the rod in their hand, but it's something that kind of, I don't know, it makes it kind of, it's hard to describe. You either are or you aren't, right? Like, are you a lifelong fish bum? Is it your passion? Does it drive you? I guess it would be defined as somebody who wants to capture those moments in their travels to share down the road.
I was thinking it was actually like an industry or something, but we brought that up. Yeah. Okay. So I'm coining it here. Fishbone TM is the adventure photographer.
The adventure fly fishing photographer.
There you go.
Or
Yeah,
fishing photographer.
with the twist, with a little
Yeah.
I have a twist in there. That's great. Okay, so the environmental side of you, right, and the truck side of you come together in the middle. And what would happen in my brain is like environmental meets automotive, electric. Devan is going to be an electric dude. Something tells me you ain't plugging in anything anytime soon. Is that true?
That is very true. I think they've got a lot of cool things coming with the electric vehicles, but I like the sound, the mechanical side of the automotive industries.
My car is electric, but it's not necessarily the fact that you can only have an electric car after you've purchased one, right? It's not like you can have whatever you want, right? The things I love about combustion gas powered vehicles are the kind of the G forces and the sound, and it's more of it's an experience, like not like surround sound experience, but you feel like you're more in touch with the vehicle, I think, because especially if it's a manual transmission, you just feel like you are the part of the machine that completes it, right? And now you are one, and you are moving through space and time. The electric car is a different experience, right? So an electric car, I know this photography podcast, so we're talking about electric cars. The electric car, in comparison, feels more about speed, right? It is just from that perspective. There are the other things, right? But when we're like comparing these kind of things from that perspective, it's if you just have a need for speed, however you can get there, right? Like people used to tinker on their cars to get every bit of horsepower out of them and speed and 0 to 60 and a quarter of a second less and all that. If that's what you're solving for, and the experience and the journey of the mechanical engine is just a means to an end, then you just want to go fast, the electric car all the way. Because those things are, they're science fiction fast, period.
That is an absolute fact.
It's crazy. Unnecessarily fast, we'll say. All right.
I think the good thing is the torque. It's just like instant power, you're there. I mean, 0 to 60 so fast. Don't get me wrong. There's some cool things about the electric vehicles. I mean,
yeah.
I have a buddy who built a Geo Metro in high school as his high school project that was electric powered, and it was super fast.
Yeah, it's a tinker in people. I don't know if it's an American thing or it's just a human thing or whatever, but like we live in this world of ors, right? It's like I gotta be an electric guy or a car guy, or I gotta be a pure photographer or a compositing person that is playing with AI. I can't do both. I got to be this or that. When the reality is always and. You can do what the heck you want to do. If you wanna like build monster trucks and then make them electric, you can do that. Right? You can do whatever the heck you want to do. Don't let people are always like, oh, I'm a this guy. We get these labels. I'm a Mac guy, or I'm a Nikon guy, or I'm a full frame guy, or I've got so many labels. It's like you're just a guy that uses these tools to get the thing that you want to get done. That's it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, chefs don't get labeled with, oh, he's a KitchenAid guy.
It's weird, right? Like we are in the photography business. I mean, just in general, like, okay, well, you don't run Mac. Well, shame on you. Like,
right. Well, you're not serious. Uh-huh.
You're not serious enough. You're shooting Canon versus Nikon. You're in the, last century. Like, it's just, it's whatever. It's, I agree. You can be everything. You can.
Yeah. We like our little tribes and all that, but it's just like, if your end result is to just be in a tribe and that's your thing, then that's fine, right? You just want to belong and then, poo-poo everybody else doing the other thing that you didn't choose. That's one thing. But if your goal is something else, like, hey, I'm building a business, or I'm telling stories, or I'm doing this, or I'm sporting, whatever, then all these other things are just means to an end to get there. And who cares what brand it is or whatever. It's just, we're going in the same direction. So what's next? Speaking of same direction, what's next for Devan? Like, what are you working on? Trips coming up? What's happening in your world?
I got a few different things. So I'll tell you automotive wise, because it's what's coming up right around the corner. Heading to SEMA this next week, taking a truck down there to
What is SEMA?
So SEMA is the largest automotive industry show in the world. It's where all the new parts are released. People are showing off vehicles they built. It's basically a giant meeting of the minds. And so heading down there for that, I'll be displaying a vehicle and then running around doing meetings for the magazines. Just meeting with different manufacturers and checking out cool projects. And so that's the most immediate thing. And then I'll be heading out to Oregon at the end of November to chase steelhead with some friends and capture that experience. And then Louisiana in the beginning of December to capture a totally different thing, in the saltwater and spend some time with some good folks down there. So immediate future, that's the next 3 trips in next month, basically.
This sounds like a dream, man. So you mentioned magazines, like shooting for magazines. Like what are you doing with the publishing industry?
Yeah, so on the automotive side, I'm the editor for F-Series Builder's Guide as well as Tread Magazine. And so F-Series Builder's Guide was F100 Builder's Guide. And this last year, we transitioned it to F-Series Builder's Guide. So it's a Ford-specific magazine. Again, Ford guy. I love it. Ford. And then the Tread Magazine is a off-road magazine. So it's a little bit of everything. We've got overlanding in there, rock crawling, pre-runners. If you want to go fast, there's a section in there for going fast. If you want to crawl real slow over some gnarly obstacles, there's that in there. Then you've got the outdoor experience with the overlanding. So camping and doing it through the automobile side. So actually like going out and experiencing nature, but be able to do it with a mechanical advantage. So, if you want to do the meetings through that, it's kind of fun.
Yeah, that's really awesome. You got to come back on. You got to come back on the show. We got to catch up on, the adventures of losing cameras in the river.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. I'd love to come back.
Cool, man. Where should people go to connect with you? Let's see the stuff that you have going on, and otherwise just see the Fords and the fish.
So if you want to see the automotive side of things, you can go to @Devan Ence on Instagram. So @DevanEnce on Instagram. If you want to see the fishing outdoor side, you can go to @Ence Media on Instagram as well. So @ENCEMEDIA. And you can connect with me on there if you want to, or you can check out the website. You can go to encemedia.com and just get a little bit of a mix of what I've got going on. So, and if you want to check out the automotive stuff and really dive in, you can grab a copy of Tread Magazine or F-Series Builder's Guide. I've got a project going on in one or the other at any given time. So doing some writing there as well.
Make sure I have links to all those. I'll put links in the blog to everything we talked about on the show today. Very cool, man. I feel like we could talk forever. So audience, you see how we were meandering, right? In that discussion, that's how it goes, all right? We're just talking about trucks, electric cars, the ocean, drones, like all over the place, So really good conversation. I hope folks got something out of this. Devan, thank you for coming on the podcast, and we will catch up. I guess maybe we should catch up after one of your next trips and see
that'd be great.
See what went down on that trip. Hopefully nothing, right? But
I hope a lot.
Everything and nothing.
Exactly. Maybe I'll smoke another camera.
There you go. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, gravity's not your friend, and it has an agreement with water to eat cameras. All right, my friend. Have a good rest of your day. Thanks for coming on the podcast. I appreciate you.
Hey, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.